And speaking of the people in the room, we are joined now by Ward 10 Alderman, West Side State Rep, and candidate for the District 20 State Senate seat, which includes Manchester Wards 3, 4, 10, 11, and the town of Goffstown, Phil Griazzo. We asked Phil to be on the show after a press release he put out in which he announced that he's asked the Attorney General of the state of New Hampshire to investigate the financial practices of incumbent Democratic State Senator Lou D'Allesandro, whose receipts and expenditures in his $300,000 war chest for a state Senate race apparently bears some scrutiny. Good morning, Alderman Griazzo.
Good morning, Rich.
Should I call you Alderman, Representative, Candidate, Phil?
Just call me Phil.
Call you Phil? Got a great picture going up on Facebook of you and Dave with your Red Sox gear. I got to warn our Facebook followers, be careful. The glare off Dave's head is rather remarkable. He caught the light just right, and so did I.
Well, I'm still blushing from the Yankees being swept out of the ALCS yesterday.
Well, at least they made it.
Sorry, Dr. Zarnack.
So this is a very serious question that you have raised, and I know from prior conversations with you, you would not have filed with the Attorney General office if they did not think that there was something worth investigating there. So why don't you tell us, Phil, specifically what you found, what you're concerned about, and what the Attorney General is going to do. And by the way, did they give you a time frame for when this investigation would be completed?
Okay. Well, going through the over 500 pages of Mr. D'Allesandro's filings,
jeez,
certain things became repetitive.
So you spotted patterns.
You see patterns. Buying flowers every 2 weeks, paying for 3 phones and a fax machine every month, car repairs, tires. Those are not campaign expenditures if they recur every month or every 2 weeks for 10 years.
So this is over a 10-year period of time that you've noted these patterns?
Correct.
And they're not happening during just campaign season. They're happening monthly?
Monthly and after campaign season. And there's a provision in Chapter 664 that says surplus campaign funds, what they cannot be used for. And, personal assistance is not one of those items.
So flowers
every 2 weeks is obviously not a campaign expense for 10 years. Buying
is he getting them from Jacques Flower Shop? Or?
No. He's getting them from other flower shops.
Really?
Yes.
Are they in his Senate district, these flower shops that he's getting them from? Or
couple in Concord, a couple around town, not necessarily his district. I didn't pay that close of attention.
So Lou D'Allesandro isn't even spending the money in his own district, as if there aren't any good flower shops in his district.
Correct.
So
Twit.
So Phil, are these like the pretty beautiful flowers that you might put in your garden, or are these the flowers that you might like break up and do something illegal with?
Different kind of flowers. These were legally purchased.
Okay.
From businesses. So his wife is either very lucky or his office looks very pretty. We're not really sure about that one. You also can't use campaign funds for personal use. So buying plane trips to other states to pick up gifts for your $5,000 birthday party doesn't necessarily seem like a legitimate campaign expense.
Okay.
Just off the top of my head.
Well, now, don't you know that it's Lou D'Allesandro and he doesn't have to play by the rules that the rest of us have to play by?
Apparently not. Reading the article that the union leader wrote, Mr. D'Allesandro's comment, which was found very interesting by the Attorney General, was that it's none of my business what he uses his money for in his political life. Now, the money is not for your political life, it's for your political campaign. So the Attorney General looked through the items that I brought with me to their office, thought some of them deserved further scrutiny, and thought it was worthwhile that I actually filed something. So I did.
Have they given you any kind of a time frame?
They gave me a vague time frame, but they were sure that the investigation wouldn't be completed by the election. So just the fact that they're interested in looking at some of these and making a determination on some of them that have never been addressed, I think is encouraging. So
now, Phil, part of your complaint included the receipt of funds directly from labor unions.
Yes.
And the receipt of funds from out-of-state organizations or people, and then contributions that D'Allesandro is making to out-of-state candidates in organizations. Why don't we get into the meat of some of that and what the law actually says about those practices and why people should be concerned that a state senator in New Hampshire is active with so much money in so many other places.
Well, the taking of money from out of state isn't a problem, but when you're taking more money than you're allowed in certain filing periods, that's a clear violation.
So he's taking more money than he's allowed to in a filing period.
After a primary, you're limited to $1,000
per contribution per person.
So if you're taking more than that, you're violating the letter of the law.
Okay.
That's happened in a couple of circumstances according to the filings. As far as prohibited political contribution, as it says, then that's 664 semicolon 4. No contribution, whether tangible or intangible, shall be made to a candidate or political committee or party in behalf of a candidate, and it goes on to say who and what and why, by any labor union or group of labor unions. So it directly says you're not allowed to take any money directly from a union, and I believe that's probably the case because
now how much money
the union members pay their dues. Oh, lots. Over the course of 10 years, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars here.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps?
No, I don't think that much. He's got his hands in a lot of people have their hands in his pocket.
Okay.
Putting money into his pockets. So I think the impetus for not allowing contributions from a labor union is the union members pay dues. They have no control over where the union spends their money. Mm-hmm. So the union should not be picking and choosing candidates, because then the rest of the membership obviously isn't being represented if they're not able to direct where those funds go, which is why getting money from a labor union isn't proper. So if I was, I used to be a Teamster, so as a union member paying my dues, if they're giving money to a candidate that I don't agree with, that doesn't seem fair for me to be required to pay my dues and then give my money to candidates that aren't necessarily voting in my best interest.
So, now if we had a right-to-work law in the state that gave workers the opportunity to join or not join a union, then they could join the union and be glad where their money was going, and if they didn't want their money to go there, they could remove themselves or not join, right?
That could probably be a very good reason why Mr. D'Allesandro votes against that measure.
Oh, all right. Now, you are also concerned about his out-of-state activity, in as much as he's received money from out-of-state organizations and individuals, but apparently has been rather active in giving contributions to those same, to out-of-state organizations. And are we concerned that Lou is potentially part of an effort to hide donations? So in other words, if the National Abortion Rights Action League gives Lou a check for $5,000 and then he turns around and gives Senate candidate so-and-so in a conservative North Carolina district $5,000, that it looks like it's coming from a state senator in New Hampshire as opposed to being a pass-through for NARAL, is that what we're afraid of? What we're concerned with here?
That is something that the Attorney General brought to my attention. I didn't
so we
look
would
at
call,
it
if this were
they call that
criminal,
money laundering.
I was going to say we would call that money laundering, wouldn't we?
We would. Mr. D'Allesandro hasn't received any donations from NARAL, but he's paid NARAL. So he's not taking money from them. He's giving money to them. He's also giving money to candidates that are running for Congress in Texas or Vermont, or governors in other states and state senators in other states that have nothing to do with New Hampshire. So I can understand him giving money to, say, Kathy Kelly in Manchester, because that may or may not help his campaign. Giving money to somebody running for office in Texas has absolutely nothing to do with his campaign.
Now, have you seen
that would be a personal contribution, not a campaign contribution.
Well, yeah. So he's taking campaign contributions that he's receiving, and then he's turning around and sending them out of state. Have you seen contributions come in from the districts or the states from where he's sending them to? So in other words, you're saying he's giving contributions to people running for Congress in Texas?
Well, various offices.
So let's say Texas. Is he also getting contributions from Texas?
I've seen a few come from Texas.
So if contributions are coming from Texas to Lou D'Allesandro here in New Hampshire, and then money is coming from Lou D'Allesandro here in New Hampshire back to Texas, are we thinking that is coincidental, or are we thinking that might be part of a plan?
That could be part of a plan for the person that is in Texas trying to contribute to the Texas candidate who's already maxed out on what they can contribute, finding a way around that effort to be able to give them more money and just use an intermediary. They call that money laundering.
and you say that, now, is there anything in New Hampshire's statutes that would prohibit that activity? And I'm not necessarily talking about campaign finance statutes here. That might fall under money laundering statute.
It would be very hard to prove that somebody in Texas who sent Mr. D'Allesandro money, and then Mr. D'Allesandro sending money to a candidate in Texas, actual direct correlation, unless you can find the candidate in Texas's campaign expenditure reports and see if that same person made donations to them as well. Then you might be able to tie it together.
Seems to me to be a fairly simple, given all the stuff that's available online today, a fairly simple investigation that could be done by our Attorney General.
That's what I'm hoping.
Now, Phil, while we're on the topic, we might as well talk about campaign finance here in the state of New Hampshire. What do you think should be done with campaign finance laws, and how should candidates and contributions to them or any political action committee be handled?
That's a tough one, because you've got the freedom to donate. You've got the freedom to – the Supreme Court ruled that money is free speech. It's at some point or level. It's really tough, but I think we could come up with some guidelines about taking money from out of state, taking money from interest groups. But again, you've got the Supreme Court ruling that says that PACs and independent expenditures can take place, so anybody could spend money. It's a matter of tracking spending from the candidate and limits that they're taking in at given points. So if we follow those guidelines, we should still be on the right track.
My own personal opinion, not that you asked, but especially in the internet age, I think that anybody should be able to give as much money they want to a candidate as long as it is immediately disclosed. So if you give $5, we got all this mess with Obama and these contributions of a certain size that are completely untraceable but appear to be coming from overseas, which is illegal. If every contribution you got, whether it was $1 or $1 million, had to be given to a third party, kind of like an eBay system, here's the third party. They receive the contribution. They record it on the internet, post it when they get it, forward it to the campaign. Instant disclosure. The one area that I would have a bar, though, is I would say, listen, if you are affected by the legislative decisions directly, like the State Employees Association should not be contributing to state senators because –
Right, they're not allowed to by law. It says they're not allowed to because they're a union.
Well, exactly. But I would have that bar where you have that direct conflict between those who are going to that direct employee-employer relationship. That's an area where I would consider a prohibition. But hey, otherwise, why not do it?
Well, there's another issue.
And every expense, by the way, in real time has to be recorded. Everything in real time has to be recorded.
Yeah. The unions that have donated have been public sector unions. So Mr. D'Allesandro voting on their public sector jobs and rules and regulations that govern their employment, taking money from them is highly inappropriate.
So Lou D'Allesandro accepting contributions apparently in contradiction to the law is under investigation now by the Attorney General. Would that be a fair statement?
That's exactly the statement.
Phil, thanks for sharing this with us. Keep us up to date.
Sure.
We'll have you back, too, to talk more on the campaign. By the way, Lou, the moment you find me ethical again, I'll be glad to have you on the show to debate Phil Griazzo.
Or answer to your charges here.
Yes, yes.